Well, welcome, brother. I appreciate that you can make some time for me all the way on the East Coast, and I'm excited to get work rocking today.
Absolutely, man. Before we get started, I got to appease the powers that be. My name is Dalton Campbell. I'm a senior financial advisor with the Anchor Group, Anchor Financial Group. We're located at 71 Wilson Boulevard, Suite A03 in Fishersville, Virginia. That's 22939. Our securities are offered through Cetera Advisors LLC. And they do business as in California, CFGA Insurance Agency LLC. Their California insurance license is 0132305. They're a member of FINRA and SIPC. The advisory services are offered through Cetera Investment Advisors LLC, a registered investment advisor, and Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Uh, I'll also say the views depicted in this material, this podcast, are for information purposes only and are not necessarily those of Cetera Advisors. They should not be considered specific advice or recommendations to any individual. And neither Cetera Advisors nor any of its reps may give legal or tax advice. So, permission to speak freely now that we've got that out of the way.
That was a mouthful, bro. I think
You
we
know
could
about
go a
that,
long
dude.
time.
The tape is really red in our line of work.
Well, you
So
got to be compliant, man. I mean, let's
yeah,
know what we
yeah,
do in our industries and make sure you're providing the right information, but at the same time,
100%,
can't make global statements, So
100%.
let's rewind the tape. So you've been doing this since what, 2016?
2016. Yeah.
Yeah, so 8 years under your belt. But let's go back a step further. What were you doing right before you got into the financial industry?
I was a personal trainer. So
Me too.
my degree is in biology. I have a minor in nutrition and wellness. And yeah, man, I was a personal trainer and I liked it, but terrible hours and not a lot of money and like a lot of turnover of clientele. And I just noticed that most of my clients were like, I mean, they were paying a lot of money to have personal training, and I wasn't getting all that money.
Mm,
And these people train at like 12 p.m. every day. And I'm like, where do you even work? Who lets you off for 2 hours to like go goof off at a gym? And
nice.
a lot of these people were self-employed, a bunch of real estate agents, some finance people. And so I was like, okay, I see. And so I looked for opportunities to be self-employed, and I've always been very good personally with my finances. And so and I was reading a lot of Tony Robbins at the time. Um, and I was like, man, I bet I could be a financial advisor. And so
Wow.
yeah, the right opportunity came along and rest is history.
How'd that happen though? Was it actually one of your clients that you ended up, getting mentored by or got you into their world?
So I had coffee with a client in Charlottesville. She was a real estate agent. I trained her, and she broke down like how her team was structured and how she made money. Um, and I was like, okay, but I was like, I don't think I want to do real estate. That doesn't sound like something I personally would be good at.
Mm.
But I think I could be good at this financial planning thing. And so I had already met with a financial advisor with our firm, or a rep with our firm. And they, I guess, had tried to make me a client, but I was broke at the time, so I was not a good client for
Not
them.
a good prospect.
Um, but I had said that I was considering getting out of personal training, looking into different sales positions because I've always been really good at business development. And they were like, well, we're hiring reps. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I don't have a degree or anything in finance or whatever. They're like, well, you don't need to. Like, there's tests and stuff like that that you pass. And I'm like, well, shoot, I'll interview. I mean, I don't, And so that's how I got into it.
That's fantastic. So a little bit of how it starts. So do you have to take like a certain number of hours of classes to pass some of those tests?
Um, so the way I started is I was kind of a junior advisor, not even an advisor. I was more of a junior rep. So I had my life insurance, health insurance, and annuities licenses. Um, and our firm, though, did really comprehensive planning. So I would go out and kind of find the people and network and talk them up. and get them in. And then me alongside one of our other senior advisors, which is what I am now, would implement the plan or whatever. They would handle all the investment advice. I would do the insurance stuff, rinse and repeat.
Nice. Were
And that
you
was
in
only
those meetings when they were doing the comprehensive plan so you could like learn
Mhm.
that trade, so to speak?
Exactly. So my
Nice.
job was just to take notes and set up the meetings.
Mm,
And I actually, made decent money doing that. But all on the commission side. And then in um, let's see, 20 at the end of my first year, first full year, I tested for my Series 7 license, which allows you basically to sell individual securities, do almost anything you would need to do as an advisor on the product side. And then along with that comes your Series 66, which you have to have kind of in tandem with that Series 7. So I took both of those pretty back to back. So by around January after my first full year, I was fully loaded from like a licensing and registration standpoint. I could do pretty much anything.
nice.
Mhm.
And now I hear that one's like that's a tough test.
It is. I mean, when I took it, it was like the 66 was not a hard test. Although I got a worse score on the 66 than I got on the 7. Probably I was just done with it at that point.
Did you not take it as seriously because you that
Yeah,
was a
I
little
didn't.
easier than the seven?
Yeah, I didn't. And I think I had to take it at like a weird testing center or something. So I was like
Mm-hmm.
thrown off my mojo. I don't know. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
passed it. I don't even know what score I got, but um, the 7 was tough. I mean, it was like an 8-hour exam. Now I think it's like maybe 4 hours. And I think there's like a SIE or something you have to take before it as like a prerequisite. So it's different now.
Okay.
I don't know if it's easier or harder. So
Yeah. Now, what do you
yeah.
really like about the financial planning, right? Because I understand you said, hey, this real estate business doesn't sound like what I really want to get into. This financial planning is. What were some of the things about it that attract you to it?
For me, it was kind of like personal training. Like each person comes in and this person wants to build muscle. This person wants to burn fat. This person wants to maybe they've got some excess skin and they want to like recomp their body or something. So every project is entirely different.
Mm,
Everybody's financial plan is a little bit different. Same principles, depending on what they're trying to do, but it's different.
never thought of it like that.
Yeah, it's basically the same. It's just instead of helping them physically, you're helping them financially.
Hmm.
And so I like the design side. I mean, I have a very, very, very sharp um, sense from a math standpoint. And I also have a really good financial intuition, stuff that I've put into practice in my own life. And so I'm able to step inside their financial picture and say, okay, here's what they want to accomplish, here's what they have, here's what their preferences are, kind of what they would probably adhere to. So here's how I'm going to build out the recommendations that I give them. And then we just hold them accountable over the course of time. And it's really neat because you get to it's just as rewarding as like personal training. When someone hits a weight loss goal where they actually adhere to their plan, which is
Right.
rare, by the way, but they
Yeah.
actually adhere to their plan and they lose that 20 pounds, you can just like, just everything in their life gets better. You can
Hmm.
just tell that they feel like $1 million and it
And you
makes you
feel
feel
the
good.
win too.
Yeah. It makes you feel good. And then, on the flip side, when you can look at a client and say, hey, it's time to retire, we did it. Or,
Mm.
hey, um, I helped a client. I'm in the process of helping someone try to plan so they can adopt a kid. And it's like,
Wow.
imagine that. I mean, we haven't really gotten that deep into it yet, but like assuming they come on board and do everything and assuming we have success, God willing, I mean, dude, that would be amazing to help that family bring a child into their home. And
Wow.
so it's that kind of cool stuff. I mean, I'm a nerd about like the strategies and stuff like that
Mhm.
too, but it's the tangible thing that people walk away with when they implement the strategy that feels good.
That's really cool, man. So you're
Yeah.
now in your second full year. You've now passed those tests. You have that under your belt. Are you
Mhm.
out now procuring those clients for you rather than the year before you were bringing them in for a different, advisor?
Yeah, so thankfully my senior advisors were really cool. and all the like assets under management or investment business that came in, they moved it all under my rep code whenever I got fully licensed.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so they were cool with it. Um, but yeah, I mean, at that point, I would still bring in someone for what we would call joint work or some joint assignment.
Yep.
If it was like, you know, I started doing a lot of basic stuff, retirement planning, basic tax minimization strategy, started working with a lot of self-employed people. Um, but sometimes you'll get that person that owns like 8 companies and like makes like 3 million a year, and there's like a lot of like extra pieces to it.
Mhm.
And for those, I would typically say, hey, let's take kind of like a firm-wide team-based approach on this one because, you know, I think I
It's
know what we
out of
need
my
to.
league right now.
Well, I think I know what I need to do, but I haven't done it before, so I just don't want to
Mhm.
screw it up. And
Right.
so there was a lot of that. And I mean, there's always going to be that in some fashion. I rely on all types of partners who are way, way, way more experienced than I am, been doing it 20, 30 years for stuff like that.
Are you in the same company that you started at?
Hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
That
different
says a
broker
lot.
dealer, but same firm, the Anchor Group. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
Hmm.
cool. So when you think about, you were rattling off, self-employed and doing the retirement planning, where are you finding your clientele?
Everywhere. I mean, I grind it out. I do a lot of talking for real estate groups. Um, I work with a lot of real estate agents, have thousands of real estate agent connections. Um, and so uh, locally, I'm in the Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors as an affiliate. So I do a lot of stuff locally for realtors, but I talk to groups. I've talked to some of your groups. I
Yeah.
mean, I've talked to groups all over the country. And so um, I kind of have a reputation at this point where I get, some interest from the real estate community. Anchor, we do a lot of branding as a firm, primarily to self-employed individuals, and so some of that flows to me since I'm the senior advisor within Anchor, so that's great.
Hmm.
Um, I run ads. I mean, I do it all. I mean, heck, I'll even make a cold call from time to time. So,
Yeah.
whatever I need to do to bring
Well,
in.
so go back to the realtor ones. How did you get started even thinking like that's a good target audience? Was it from that person that you sat for coffee that one day, or did something else come up?
No, it wasn't that. It was so in my industry, everybody's a whale hunter. In other words, they want the client that makes $500,000 a year and that's going to make them in theory, a lot of revenue over time. Well,
Hmm.
that's fine. I mean, if a whale landed in my lap today, I'd be like, heck yeah, December's accounted for. Let's go. But, you know, that's a red sea. It's a red ocean. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, uh, everybody wants to work with medical professionals.
Mm.
And I noticed that through my networking, because I talk to other advisors, a lot of these hospital systems, there's advisors who've been doing stuff for 20, 30 years in that same city who they've infiltrated that hospital system. And anytime somebody new comes in, they're getting that person's business card.
Right.
I mean, it's that deep.
Yeah.
I don't know who I have to schmooze or whatever, but I'm just not playing that game. That's not how I roll. If you're
Hmm.
gonna work with me, you're gonna work with me because you've heard about me and you think I'm the best, and that's why I want it. I don't want some political relationship that feeds me business.
Hmm.
So I didn't want to go after, chasing white coats and stuff like that. And I was like, but I had to get business. And I was like, you know what? I'm self-employed. Uh, I've made a couple, mistakes in my time as someone who's self-employed. Um, I think there's a lot of value that we can add just on the tax minimization side for people who are self-employed. And last time I checked, there's over 1,000 agents just in the Charlottesville, Virginia area,
Mm.
and their emails are public. I mean, how
Wow.
else are you going to get in touch with them? So it's
Yeah.
not like there's not like so I can email these people and ask to get coffee, and a lot of them probably will because they're probably trying to network too.
Right.
And so I just kind of thought of it. And to my surprise, nobody was helping realtors.
Hmm.
Like nobody.
Wow.
To this
Blew up.
day, I think I'm the only advisor in the Realtors Association in Charlottesville.
Really? Dude,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. Nice job.
Yeah. So,
And then, so do you do what other ways of prospecting for other
a
self-employed people? Is that just through the networking? You go into the chamber? What else are you doing?
lot of that. I'll ask for referrals. I'm in a handful of different groups.
Hmm.
Um, I've tried like lead generation tools before to like get emails and stuff that I can send cold emails to. Um, but a lot of it's through networking, and primarily because I don't need to do 100 transactions a year. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Like I need 20 clients a year to have a solid year revenue wise. And
20
so,
additional, like 20 new ones in
mhm.
2025.
Yeah, if I brought in
Okay.
20 clients in 2025 and they were the right clients, like they did comprehensive planning like we do,
Hmm.
yeah, I'd hit my revenue goal for sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's good. I like that you have it down to like the number. Like, hey, this
Yeah.
is the target. This is what they need to be, their avatar, so to
Hmm.
speak. I need
Hmm.
20 of them. And so
Hmm.
now it's just a game of how do I get them?
Yep.
What's some of
Yep.
your I love talking about playbooks, right? So is what are some of the things that you're doing to follow up with your current clientele, that current book of business that you have their money under management, that you've done
Mhm.
some sort of a plan with them? What is your, and maybe it's annual, semi-annual, quarterly,
Mhm.
monthly, weekly. What's some of those follow-up touches that you have for them?
Well, the cool thing, this is cool in a sense, but it's also quite a task every year, is for clients who are on the advisory platform, which means we're doing fee-based planning for these people. You have to meet or speak to them every single year and you have to document it. It's a requirement. And so, um, you know, I take that very seriously, but I see as an opportunity, to have a comprehensive meeting, make sure their plan's tracking like it needs to, update their accounts if we need to make updates to their accounts, make sure everything's good. We can do that every 6 months, once a year. Some clients meet once a quarter. Um, so I kind of try and set it up with each client individually. And in that meeting, you're hearing about life updates. In our industry, there's a lot of repeat business. And so, for example, I had a client, I guess it was last year. He's been my client for 10 years and, you know, has investments or whatever. And he was ready to retire. And so when he retired, he had other stuff that he was interested in rolling. And so that I wasn't managing at the time. And so in our industry, you're probably going to transact with your clients, I don't know, 5 or 10 times over the course of a 30-year relationship. Um, and so, you know, understanding where those opportunities are, every year there's going to be people who are at that point, and you're just kind of, you're getting easy kind of new business, I guess, but it's not new business because it's an old relationship.
Right.
But that's one way. And then the other is asking for referrals. So in those meetings, saying, hey, do you know any real estate agents? Hey, any self-employed people? There's this tax credit thing we're working on. I'd love to connect with them. Do you know anybody who's looking for a speaker? That type of thing. And holding myself accountable to doing that. And I'm not great at it. 2025 will be different. Because I've never been good at holding myself accountable to that, but it works.
Holding
And
yourself accountable to the asking for referral.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. Good. I mean, you've earned the right to ask.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I'm definitely at a point in my career where I don't feel salesy anymore doing it.
Hmm.
I mean, my bills, thankfully, are probably going to get paid regardless of whether or not I get a new deal next month. So I might as well ask. Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah.
And like people know like people, right? So you're already
Right.
helping these people with their money. They have money, they're self-employed, they probably know other
Mhm.
self-employed, and so they know exactly what you're looking for.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good
Yep.
strategy. So going back though, your own sales skills, was that something that was like, when we in the mortgage business and even in the real estate business, you go to take the classes to then get your license. They
Mhm.
don't teach anything about sales, marketing, advertising, follow up, any of it. Was
Yeah.
that something that you learned prior to that you brought in from the personal training? Was that trained at all at your current company?
Um, I realized that I was pretty good at sales in personal training. Um, it's funny. So we had these things called fitness assessments. I used to work at through Gold's Gym, and a
Yeah.
fitness assessment is somebody comes in, you give them a free session, you take their measurements or whatever, and then you try and sell them a PT package.
Yeah. You found out their
Well,
goals and then you show them, hey, I can
right,
help you get to there
right,
faster, quicker.
right.
Yeah.
So this gym that I was at, nobody could sell. Like the trainers never made sales. And so I had a fitness assessment with this guy and went through the session. I took some notes and we went back in the training room. I took his measurements and I got his goals and I was like, tell you what, man, I'll be honest, I think he'd be a good training client. And I meant it. I was like, you want to lose like 15, 20 pounds, you've got an athletic base. I think this would be really easy as long as you would adhere to what I'm telling you to do. I think this could be really easy. Could be a year and we have you like solid. And but I meant it because
Mhm.
I was in like I felt like I could work with this guy. And I was like, you could do 1 year. I think it was like $400 a month or something. But I'm like, it'll be $400 a month. So, if there's some type of financial constraint, then don't do it. But if you can swing $400 a month and it's something you want to commit to, I think we can hit your goals, no problem. And he was like, sure. And I was like, all right. And then I signed him up. And yeah, it was like I didn't really think anything of it. And then the gym kind of like made a big deal about it. They were like, you just sold a $5,000 package on your first. And I'm like, well, yeah, I think I can help the guy. I mean, yeah,
Right.
I told him he didn't have to, but like I didn't think anything of it. I was just being honest. And I do the
Right.
same thing in financial planning. If I think I can help somebody, I'll be honest. If not, well, I'll be honest about that too.
Right.
I don't want to just like I'm not just slinging products or anything. Like I
Yeah.
like to put together puzzles. And so
I
uh
like that.
I think it just translated. I never really pressured anybody. I never tried to like be a wordsmith or anything. I was very transparent, and I think people
Hmm.
appreciated that.
Yeah. Did that guy hit his goals?
He actually got a back injury or something.
Oh.
Not working with me. He got a back injury, I think, like a month in.
Mm.
And then he took some time off and wasn't good about coming to the gym. But he had improved. He had gotten stronger. His lean body mass had done better. But I don't know. I haven't seen the guy now in like 10 years. So
Yeah. I was waiting for a
hope
super.
he's doing
Oh my
well.
God, he finished the package. He redeemed it.
No,
He's 6% body fat.
no.
There's so many correlations though, because I was a trainer too, where you like you said, like you get that assessment, you show them their goals, you explain how they'll get there faster with you, and
Hmm.
it'll be a lot easier journey. And then obviously
Yeah.
they then commit to that. But it all started with your commitment and you knowing that you could get them there. That's
Hmm.
where it's not sales. You're just partnering up with them to help them to their
Right.
goal quicker.
Right. And I also think it's important to practice what you preach. At the time, I was competing in bodybuilding. And so
Wow.
I was eating the meals. I was 6% body fat. I had a six pack. I'm not just, and I grew up when I was fat when I was in middle school. I was like 200 pounds in sixth grade.
Really?
So, like, yeah. So, like, I'm not just some random guy who has a certification who's telling you what to do. Like, I literally
Yeah.
do this myself every day. So, I promise you this is going to work personal training wise if you follow it. On the investment side, obviously we can't promise anything, but on the investment side, I try to practice what I preach. I'm really good with my own money. I've been a relatively high earner most of my career. I didn't go out and buy a Porsche my first year. I've been very, very good with my finances. I could probably never contribute to my personal investments ever again, and I'd probably make a few hundred grand a year in retirement. And
Wow.
so, just through compounding.
Yep.
And so,
That's awesome.
when I tell somebody to do something, I'm not sitting in some ivory tower barking orders. I'm saying, hey, here's what I do too. I'm in
Mhm.
the trenches doing this myself. And so, you know, I'm happy to kind of it's not like I'm selling anything. I'm just telling people what I would do if I was in their situation.
Yeah, it's that old adage, if you want to get somewhere, you ask the person that's coming back from that place,
Yeah.
right?
And this isn't to discount people with PhDs or whatever, but I always say, like, if I'm hiring someone to get me ripped or to increase my bench press by 10 pounds, am I going to hire someone that's 400 pounds and has a PhD in health and nutrition? Or am I going to hire somebody that has a GED but's competed in bodybuilding, is super shredded, has cut and bulk, who benches 400 pounds?
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I'm not crapping on academia, but let's be honest, experience is huge.
For sure.
Actually
Yeah.
doing something yourself is different.
Do you put your clients on some sort of a budget, or do you help them walk through their budget? Like, hey, here's how much you need to survive every month. Here's how much you're really making. Here's the delta. Here's how much we should invest. Here's what it'll end up being later on. Like, do you take them through that kind of a formula?
I try to. Yeah. A lot of people just starting off, I definitely do that. Some people don't want to be put on a budget. Some people
Hmm.
like to spend their money, and all it's going to do is create friction. They're not going to, because the other thing about, like, if we equate this to fitness, the best fitness plan is the one you're going to adhere to.
Right.
If I put you on a rice and beans budget and we start building investments, that's great, but you're not going to adhere to that for very long.
Not
We might
sustainable.
as,
Yeah.
yes, we might as well do something you're comfortable with that gets you in that habit, and then maybe we get a little aggressive from there.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of people have a sense, for what they're spending and what they're putting out. But if they don't, yeah, I mean, I've got templates and stuff. Obviously, there's apps you can use for budgeting. There's so many
Hmm.
tools. Um,
But in
but
the beginning assessment, you at least have evaluated, hey, here's how much you're bringing in, here's what's going
Mhm.
out every month. Let's talk about it. Some people you have to say, hey, let's
For
introduce you to a
sure.
little bit of budgeting so we can squeeze a little more out so you can invest
Hmm.
more and make more.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's all, the financial plan, especially if it's like a long-term retirement plan, which is probably 50, 60% of what we do.
Hmm.
It's a math equation. And uh, if you have the right formula or you have the right numbers to plug into the formula, it's like it's turnkey. I mean,
Right.
so if I have a client who wants to make X amount of money in 28 years, they have X amount of money, and we can assume Y is a rate of return, just an assumptive kind of moderate conservative return, then that tells me how much they need to contribute to those assets every year to hit that end goal.
Hmm.
And so if their budget allows for that, great. They don't really have to change anything. If their budget doesn't, now we're having a conversation where it's like, hey, you can do what you're doing now. You're not going to hit this goal mathematically. Probably not
Right.
going to happen. So we can increase your budget. We can do this over time, whatever. But yeah, I need that number to
Mhm.
be accurate. Otherwise, we're just setting up accounts and hoping for the best.
Right. Yeah. And at least knowing that number. And that number doesn't have to be as large if you're younger,
Right.
right? Because as you and
Right.
I both know, compounding. So
Yes.
catching people early
Yeah.
is a key, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's a few different, and not even, like financial advice in regards to like other than budget, what's some of the other things you would tell maybe the younger generation or even, those newly self-employed, just getting started, don't have a lot of fiscal literacy? What's some of the basics that people should just know?
Yeah. I mean, the first is budget. Like, you really can't over harp on that.
Yep.
Um, but I would say try to set a short, if you're 25 years old, thinking about when you're 65, you can do it. You can do it in a calculator, but it's hard to actually visualize what 65 years old is going to look like and feel like for you because you're 25 years old.
Mm.
And so what you can do though is you can visualize yourself being 32. Do you have a kid? Do you have two kids? What does your house look like? What does your car look like? How much are you earning? How much do you have invested? And try to set kind of a checkpoint, right? Like, hey, by the time I'm 30, my personal goal is I wanted to have $100,000 in investments by the time I was 30. Now I ended up with 600,000 because I way over like analyzed it or whatever and
You
put this.
followed a plan. You followed a plan.
Yeah, I was very frugal. Um, but had I hit that goal, I knew that compound interest would do a ton of work by the time I was 60, 65. And if I kept feeding that account, that's even better. And so you can't replace that compounding effect. If I were to wait 20 years and spend a bunch of money and travel the world and buy a Porsche, um, you know, I might still hit that goal, but it's gonna cost me a lot more out of pocket to hit that same goal than it would if I got there when I was 25 or 30.
Right.
So, um, so setting like a short-term goal. And then lastly, don't look for the right time. There's no right time to buy a house. The right time to buy a house was 2021 and it's 2024. So that's ancient history. Buy a house when you need a house, you know, uh, in investments, just start investing. The market could drop tomorrow. It could go up tomorrow. I don't know. Where do you think the market's going to go over the next 40 years? Bet on that. And
Hmm.
so, I think that people try to get way too creative and overanalyze. And they just need to focus on setting a short-term goal and then doing the basic things and creating those basic habits, and
Hmm.
that'll carry them the whole way.
I like that. And some I learned too is those habits. Like even if you buy a stock of some sort or
Mhm.
investment or the house, like it doesn't have to be like an all-in thing. Like, you hear people say save 20% of your paycheck. Well, if you can only save 5%, that's okay. At least get
Yeah,
in the habit of paying yourself first. Like carve a little out,
yeah,
save it. Carve a little
yeah,
out, get with someone who knows what they're doing on where to put it, but you
yeah.
could at least carve a little out and get in the habit of doing that. And then
Correct.
incrementally over time, 5 years, 10 years, you'll be now making bigger deposits, but
Mhm.
you at least had the habit formed early of saving.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I hate percentages. I hate when people are like, oh, what percent or this or that.
Yeah.
Taxes can be a percentage because that is actually something, based off a percentage scale.
Hmm.
But people are like, should I save 10% of my income? Okay, well, if you make 30,000 a year, you're saving 3 grand a year. That's probably not going to retire you.
Hmm.
Whereas if you make $1 million a year, you're saving 100,000. You might not even need to save $100,000 a year.
Hmm.
And so it's really customized to the person. Some of the wealthier clients that I've dealt with made like 50 grand during their careers. They just never spent money.
Right.
And I know people who make $250,000 a year who are broke, very
Hmm.
broke.
Yeah.
So, um, it's, I try to focus, yeah, on like, what can you do now? And once you start to see some results, or once you start to see, oh man, I've been doing this for 5 years and look, my account's gone up X amount or whatever. Um, you know, or you see the market moving and you kind of understand, oh, this is a way I can grow my money exponentially, right? That's when you're more willing to do more and more.
Right. Absolutely. Now, rewind a little bit. You had talked about, and you did this offered this out to my clients, but that self-employed tax credit. Are you allowed to talk a little bit about that in generality?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so the self-employed tax credit is actually an expansion of the paid sick and family leave credit. So it's a legit IRS tax credit dating back to 2020 and 2021. You can't claim 2020 anymore, just 2021. It runs out in April of 25. And the issue with this tax credit is it wasn't rolled out. They issued it, they expanded that credit, but then, and I believe they set aside something like $50 billion or something for it.
Wow.
But it applies to people who had 1099 income or single member LLCs or partnerships. So Schedule C income. And a lot of people are actually going to fall into qualifying for this. And you can get up to $32,220. The problem, though, with the credit is your local CPA, it wasn't in their tax planning software. It wasn't, when they plug your numbers in, it wasn't part of that calculation. It wasn't in their continuing education. So nobody knew about it.
Mm,
We found out about it in 2023, 3 years, 2 or 3 years after
wow.
the credit came out. And, uh, you know, we checked with our partners. They didn't know about it. We found out there was like one firm in the entire country who was processing this thing. And so we were like,
Crazy.
holy cow, how many self-employed people do we personally work with?
Mm,
And how many self-employed people do they know? And then how many do they know? How many hairstylists, real estate agents, insurance agents, financial people, consultants, like how many of these people could get access to the credit who are never even gonna hear about it?
never gonna know about it.
And so, yeah, we already had a system called Gig Worker Solutions, which is a community for self-employed individuals. We already had that built out. And then there was we have an awesome ops team. They were able to go in and build out basically an online interface to go in, calculate, see if you qualify. You can upload your returns. It's all encrypted, secure. It's compliant with the IRS. They have two former IRS employees who are tax attorneys on retainer to help with compliance. And so it's turned into a pretty massive operation. Anchor's processed close to $600 million of credit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you guys. Good for your
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah. But the crazy thing is 600 million. They set aside 50 billion.
That's crazy. Well, so
So
they
many,
set that aside knowing that there's that much out there
or
because they know all
potentially,
that data.
yeah, potentially there was.
Hmm.
And so it definitely flew under the radar. This is something that you know you have until April to do it, April 18th. So literally 5 months. And it's gone. And God willing, there's never another COVID. I hope we never see this credit again because it was
Right.
to be something bad that would lead to it. Um, but we have mutual connections who've gotten 15,000, 50,000,
Wow.
or at least are on pace to get 50,000. And it's
That's
like,
awesome.
you
Stuff
know,
that they never would have, known they had access to.
and it's a credit. I mean, it's
Mhm.
straight cash.
Mm,
It's not a deduction, it's a credit. And
that's awesome.
so um and the other cool thing is the IRS owes you interest dating back to 2021.
Wow.
Well, what were interest rates in 2022 and 2023? Pretty freaking high.
Hmm.
So, it's possible that all the fees and stuff like that you have to pay to have it processed, most of that stuff's probably covered with interest from the
Man,
IRS. So,
killer.
yeah, so it's a cool program.
Well, look, if you want more information, you can just comment or reach out to whatever channel you're on watching
Yes.
this because that's a great one. And like you said, there's a lot of my clients that benefited from that and still
Yeah.
that need to take advantage of that. And I forgot that it expires in April, so thanks for
Yeah.
bringing that up.
It's free to do the calculator. It's free to create a profile inside Gig Worker Solutions. There's even a lot of discounted services. There's health insurance options for self-employed people. There's a PEO. There's IT services. There's preferred shipping with UPS. There's all types of stuff inside Gig Worker Solutions for self-employed people. It's free to join it, free to do the calculator, and if you qualify, let's help you out. We're also the only firm that's processing this um, that has access to an advance. So we can
Oh,
advance the
nice.
funds in as little as 20 days.
Wow.
Because we
Well,
have
especially rolling
people,
into the holidays. That's a great advantage.
I have people who applied in September of 2023 who still haven't gotten their second check.
Wow.
Yeah. And
That's the
so,
IRS.
yeah, well, yeah, I mean, there's been a learning curve, over time where we're like, okay, now they want to see this, they want to see. Now the process is very seamless
Hmm.
because we know now after doing tens of thousands of these things, all the loopholes
Hmm.
with getting it across. But, unfortunately, the early adopters, um, who are more than happy to keep pushing for, but those early adopters are playing the waiting game with the IRS. And so, um, But the advance option is super cool. I mean, you can get funds in as little as 20 days if you qualify.
Man, that's
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah.
So I know this is obviously part of your comprehensive planning, right? Are there like, I don't know, like sections, meaning, hey, let's talk about, your investing, let's talk about your tax protection or, tax planning, let's talk about
Mhm.
wealth protection. Like, is there certain segments that or categories, I don't know how you put it, that you're working with your people on when you're doing these consultations?
Yeah. Sometimes it's one or two specific areas.
Mhm.
For example, if we work with real estate investors are good clients, but they're interesting clients because they don't want anything to do with any investment other than real estate.
Okay.
And that's cool. Most of them have zero cash. And so they have tax minimization goals, and that tends to be the bulk of what we're doing is more of like how can we reduce their tax exposure as they build their real estate portfolio.
Yep. Okay.
Um, those people are probably not consulting for retirement planning or budgeting or anything like that. Um, a lot of people though do take a traditional approach where they use financial products, maybe in tandem with real estate or something else to accumulate wealth. Those individuals, we're doing it all. I mean, we're making sure that things are as tax efficient as they can be, but we're also plugging in the numbers and making sure we're managing the wealth the right way. We do a ton of wealth management, that their retirement plans on pace, and so
Mm.
my favorites, selfishly, are the ones who want to do it all with us.
Yeah.
But I'm also not going to turn away somebody who just has one or two specific pieces. Some people just want wealth management. I mean,
Yeah.
Samara has a really awesome platform. It's a pleasure to be able to use it. And so, some people just want to do wealth management. That's cool too.
When you talk about the protection piece, and I don't know how much you can get into it, but I've had people, including myself, where I have like an insurance vehicle that I'm actually borrowing money to actually use it into
Hmm.
real estate. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little around that?
Yeah, so there are different types of life insurance. There's term life, there's whole life, there's universal life. And permanent insurance, which would be whole life and universal, there is a cash component to it. So you can build cash over time in the contract. Now, all that stuff's subject to the claims paying ability and financial stability or whatever of the insurance carrier that you're choosing. So we want to be careful that you choose a good carrier and stuff like that. But you can custom build those products and fund them. Many of them are flexible in how much you can fund every year, and there is a cash component. Now it's important to note it's still an insurance contract. It's not an investment account. It's not a Roth IRA. It's an insurance policy, and so you might not have as much cash as you put in the first 5 years, 10 years, maybe 15 years. But over time, if you design it right, hopefully we see that cash accumulate and you're even over what you've contributed in. The cool thing about it is you can access that via a policy loan tax free.
Mm.
Okay, so if it's structured the right way, you can access that money tax free. And it's, because they earn dividends and there's certain restrictions on the borrowing amounts and stuff, it's unlikely that you're going to lapse the contract if you do it the right way. So many times you don't even have to pay the loan back if you don't want.
Hmm.
Um, so, if you utilize it the right way, you can almost look at it as sort of like a super bond of sorts, where you're getting a yield in the form of a dividend from the insurance carrier, um, that should be tax advantaged. Um, and the yields paid by insurance carriers, the dividends, they haven't even changed a lot. Even in 2020 and 2021, when interest rates were nothing, I mean, you make 0.1% at the bank. A lot of insurance carriers were still paying 4 or 5% dividends.
Mm.
And so it's going to operate kind of like a fixed cash position or like almost like a bond of sorts, except there's no underlying security to it. So there's no fluctuation in the base security. Um, and typically the yields or the returns are decent even when interest rates are low. So
Yeah.
Um, that's the thought behind it.
Hmm.
But that is something that, for the right client could be a good addition to the other types of investing they're doing.
Yeah. Like you said, there's just so much to talk about. And like you said, just like the personal training client, like everyone's different with
Right.
their own personal makeup
Hmm.
financially and
Hmm.
then also where they want to get to.
Hmm.
And, having someone like you to show them the way to get
Hmm.
there.
Hmm.
So they have the path of least resistance with maximum
Right.
output.
Right. Right.
That's killer, man. Well, dude, this has been fun. I definitely want to have you on again and pick your brain a little bit more. And I know this
Yeah.
is helpful because I truly think there's a fiscal literacy problem in America. It's just not taught enough about what to do with the money, how it even operates, and how to maximize it for yourself. And a lot of times it hits people later in life to where it's really a steep uphill grind to get to retirement.
Yeah. Well, we fight a lot of battles. I think there's emotional responses to money. I think, you turn on the TV to watch a football game and it's ad after ad after ad. Um, your kids are constantly saying, I want this, I want that. You don't want to let your kids down. So we have a spending problem. Credit card debt is at an all-time high. Um, Cash reserves for the average family are probably at an all-time low. And
Yeah.
so a lot of that is influenced just because there's 99 people telling us to spend our money and there's one or two people telling us to invest our money.
Mm,
Um, you know, Financial success has to be a robotic numbers game. It can't be an emotional game.
right. Build those habits.
Yeah.
That's awesome, bro. Well, hey,
Yeah.
man, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, dude. Thank
Thanks,
you.
brother. Later.
Bye.